Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow orders to the letter to spite someone. And in today's episode, it's all about Karens who think they know better than the dumb employee in their mind. We've got Karens embarrassing themselves left and right in this one. And Opie tells the story about the time a Karen did not obey him and she destroyed her own car. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I worked at a hardware store 7 years ago. We sold these big gas cylinders, and if you brought in an empty bottle, we would give you a filled one in exchange for a price. So how it worked was the customer came to the checkout, expressed their wishes on what kind of bottle they needed, and then paid. The gas bottles were then given to them outside of the store at a loading station for bigger goods. The checkout machine would print automatically 2 receipts. One normal receipt, and one that the customer would hand to a worker in the loading station outside as proof they paid for the gas. That said, in comes the villain. It's a middle-aged man who wants to exchange his empty bottle for a filled one. He's being a generic a-hole, and the guy barely acknowledges me, the cashier in my mid-20s. So the guy pays, the machine prints his receipts, and I hand it to him. Well, the guy takes it, crumples it up, and throws it at me. He then says to me, "I don't need a receipt. For what?" Now, working in customer service was not a peak career point, and as every sane person knows, customers are often wrong. However, never ever had I been disrespected so much that somebody would throw a piece of trash at me. So in kicks the malicious compliance. I knew the dude needed the receipt to get what he paid for. So I took the receipt ball he made, dropped it quietly into the trash bin next to me, and I start helping the next customer in line. The disrespectful man waddles away, and like 10 minutes later, after being denied a gas bottle, he comes back to me and he says he needs the receipt back. At this point, I was busy with a customer, so with the biggest smile on my face, I said, "Sure, it's in here," and then proceed to hand the trash bin to him. Divine Justice had also arranged it, so we had cleaned the checkout floors quite recently, and emptied the dust into the trash bin. That meant the guy had to stick his hands into the garbage bin full of dust, old chewing gums, and whatever yucky stuff had ended up in the huge bin. The guy spent a few minutes digging through it, and then he gave up. He went to customer service to get a new receipt printed. I am glad to say though, the a-hole turned a lot nicer, and he lost his demeaning attitude as he was shuffling through the trash. Yeah, I just love how that guy was humbled in the end after being so freaking rude to OP. Like, that is some next level, entitled, disrespectful BS to throw something at an employee. And I'm glad he had to go digging through the trash in front of all of those customers. And this person comments, "What is wrong with people throwing stuff at customer service people?" I caddied at the local country club when I was a teenager, and the member I was caddying for said, "Throw this away for me," and tossed a half-full can of Diet Coke at me. I let it hit me in the chest, fall to the ground, looked at him, looked down at the Diet Coke all over my caddy smock, dropped his bag, and told him to carry his own clubs. I then walked back to the clubhouse. Many years ago, I worked in a locally run store that sold a bit of everything. I was the low-paid teenager that carried heavy things to people's vehicles. While working one day, I get called over the radio that a customer needed 12 bags of concrete, 80 pounds each. Now, I was expecting to see a pickup truck or something similar backed up to the loading area. Instead, I see this small Honda Civic there waiting for me. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked the driver to relocate momentarily, as I had someone coming to pick up multiple bags of concrete. Imagine my surprise when they told me that they were the customer I was waiting for. I just thought to myself, oh, maybe the guy planned to do it in multiple trips. So I asked the customer how much they wanted to take in each trip, as I believe the nearly 1,000 pound of concrete might be too much for such a small vehicle to handle safely. The customer becomes aggravated and insisted that they were taking it all at once. Hearing this, I quickly ran this past the store owner to make sure I wouldn't be held liable for any damages. I then ran back, apologized to him, and then began loading the bags. As I was loading the concrete up, the customer made several quips, saying how dare I question what he wants done. and that I'm lucky he's not taking this to my supervisor. The guy also said that I was way too young and naive to understand that vehicles are engineered with a margin of safety. It quickly became apparent after a few bags that there was no play left in the suspension, but at this point, I just stopped questioning things. I couldn't fit all the bags in the trunk, so the guy actually cleared his back seat and had me load that up as well. Upon leaving the loading area, you could clearly hear things rubbing. As the car went to exit the parking lot, it passed over the elevation change between the lot and the road, and there was a loud pop of something breaking, followed by scraping. I could clearly see the driver was pissed. After a moment, the guy gets out, looks around and under his car. He then sheepishly asks for my cell phone because his had died and he needs to make a few phone calls. A short time later, a tow truck came to remove the car, and the guy waited in our parking lot for nearly 2 hours until his wife could come pick him up. You know what, at least he didn't try to blame OP, right? And again, another case of someone getting served a slice of humble pie. But you gotta wonder, what in the world was that man thinking, right? Like, imagining that poor little Honda Civic being loaded up with over 1,000 pounds of concrete and then scraping and creaking all the way to the parking lot exit makes me cringe, guys. And if you think that was bad, listen to this next post. So this happened many years ago. I used to work at a furniture warehouse while in college, and throughout the day, we would have to bring large items out for customers. We also had an outlet store, so we often had to bring out unboxed appliances. One day, this customer comes in with a receipt for a fridge he bought from the outlet store, so I grab it and bring it out. It turns out he has a pickup with a very tall canopy over the back, and a bed that was absolutely full of construction debris. Now, this crap was level with the top of the pickup bed, but the canopy was pretty tall and it would accommodate most of the fridge laying on its back. Anyways, we shoved it in, but it didn't quite fit far enough to close the back doors. So I ran and I grabbed some nylon twine to tie the two door handles together to keep it from flying out. At this point, the customer starts giving me crap for being so stupid, asking me why even bring out the weak twine, that'll break immediately. I point out that the twine was absolutely as strong as could be and definitely would not break. But the guy starts rifling around the back of his truck and he pulls out 10 feet or so of coaxial cable, like TV cable, the cable that plugs into your TV. The guy then says to me, "Here, now this is strong." And at this point, I couldn't help looking at him like he was insane. And you might make a case that it is somewhat strong, but there's no way that you could tie it together to secure it. It would clearly unravel almost instantly. I tactfully tried to explain this to him, but the guy got madder and madder, saying he knows better than I do and I'd better let him do what he wants. So of course I complied. But at this point, I began to realize that I'd better get a witness to me to help explain to this dude that he was on crack. So I call loss prevention and they come down and together we explain to him that we can't guarantee that his rigged BS would properly secure his load, and if something happens, we would not be liable. Loss prevention took some photos of the completely tied up job as proof that he was happy with the job. And flash forward 15 minutes. The guy is sitting back in our parking lot. There's no fridge in his truck and the guy's steaming mad. He screams that he wants to see the store manager. So I call the manager and then also call loss prevention, who came a bit later. So apparently he drove down the road and about a quarter mile away, he turned right to get on the freeway ramp. At which time, the back doors flew open as the coaxial cable snapped and the fridge flew out. Apparently, it was currently sitting in 3 pieces on the side of the freeway entrance. This guy was screaming at the store manager, wanting him to fire me immediately, claiming that I completely messed up loading his car and he wants a new fridge. At this point, loss prevention shows up, and he explained to the manager it wasn't quite the way he was saying it. The loss prevention dude then told the manager that I offered to secure it tightly with our approved super strong twine, but the customer insisted he use a coaxial cable instead. He also made it clear that I felt that this would not secure the fridge, and in fact, called him up to document the situation. And here's the photos of what it looked like and what the customer said he approved. The manager just looked at the photo, rolled his eyes, and then told the customer, "I'm sorry, sir, this is completely on you." And then the manager walks away. I was stunned, but I guess this situation was so clear-cut to the manager that he wasn't going to give an inch. At this point, realizing he wasn't going to get what he wanted, the guy sputtered that he was going to sue us. And in the distance, without turning around, the manager just says, "It's always your prerogative to throw away even more of your money." The guy never sued. Guys, I don't even know what to say to this, like a coaxial cable of all things. Like, I am honestly so shocked that the guy's a truck owner and he chose a frickin' coaxial cable over some twine. Like, have you never ever had to tie anything down? That said though, massive props to OP for calling loss prevention to cover their ass and to take pictures of this absurdity. Like, it's just funny to me how some people think that they know more than lowly employees. Especially those employees who load up giant items for people on a daily basis. But hey, the customer is always right, except when they're not. So a little backstory here. I am a professional mechanic and I have been for a little over 10 years. I specialize in diagnostics and heavy repair. We work on all makes and models. Now, being a mechanic, we've seen the spectrum of customers who get mad over something they did, bad parts and whatnot. But this story, even after 5 years, still makes me chuckle. It was a normal day when this lady drives her Hyundai van in for a diagnosis. Think of an older looking Karen. Nothing unusual about her at first. The woman comes up and she says her check engine light came on and the car just does not want to move like it used to. No problem, I tell her. As we write up the work order and everything, I get to work while she waits. Upon pulling the van in, I notice it's making noise. So I shut it down and immediately plugged my scanner in to read the computers in the car for errors. And a bunch of error codes pop up. After looking over them, I see they all lead in the direction of timing issues. The car sees different positions for the mechanical parts in the engine, and my thought is, oh, the timing belt jumped, which is easy. The timing belt is a very critical part of some engines. It keeps the crankshaft and camshafts in perfect alignment. So I open the hood, and I go to pull the covers to expose the belt and check the condition. And I had to take a few steps back, and I let out an audible, "Holy crap." I found half the belt missing. The other half is literally about to break completely. I see a few strands left holding this belt together, and it's a miracle it even ran to get to my bay. And here's an FYI. This particular engine is designed with tight tolerances, such as if the timing is too far off, it basically destroys the engine. The valves slam into the pistons, which results in broken metal, banging, which is bad things that cost a lot of money. So we look it over, and we see the vehicle is 30,000 miles past the recommended change for a timing belt. It's amazing this thing runs. So of course, we inform the customer and we bring her out to the shop and we show her what we found. We then try to explain to her that she needs to get it fixed right away. Thankfully, she sees it, and from my explanation, she appears to understand completely. I inform her that it's a miracle it even drove in. I highly recommend that she not drive it or even start the engine until after the belt's been replaced. This is when we go up front and I go over the timing belt replacement package with her, the cost of labor, and the parts. And as soon as she heard the price to fix the van, she flat out screams, "No, I don't trust you people." And I want to note, we get that a lot. I try to answer any questions she may have, but no, the woman's not having any of it. So I let her know that we'll price match any in town, and that I've already marked it down way below normal price to try to help her out. Despite this, the woman says no, she wants her car back. So I suggest she tow it to where she wants to go, and she flips on me. She screams and says, "I drove my car in, so I'm going to drive it out." At this point, I try to reason with her, almost begging her to not drive it out. But the woman just screams in my face and says, "You idiots won't scam me today." And I just thought, okay. I immediately have her sign a waiver that says she understands what can happen and that we're not liable. And by this point, we've reassembled the covers and we've pushed the van to the parking lot. I again try to reason with her that it's a bad idea to run this engine. I tell her that a belt replacement is only a few $100s versus $5,000 for a full replacement of an engine. She says, no, I'm driving it. And here's the thing, she almost refused to pay the diagnostic fee until I told her I can hold the car indefinitely without payment. This whole time, I'm trying to be nice, but by now, she's been screaming at me and my coworkers for 30 minutes. The woman says that I'm holding her vehicle hostage and that I'm trying to sell her repairs she knows she doesn't need. As for the malicious compliance, I just hand her the keys, which she basically just rips from my hands and storms out. We all kind of gathered to see if it would even start. We hear the engine crank, it fired up, and then bam, followed by a stall. We couldn't believe it. She attempted to start it again. This time, just the engine free spinning with no compression. The belt broke and the engine had been damaged. And I'm thinking, oh great, here goes the next hour of my life. I'm trying hard not to laugh at this point. But here's where she goes completely off the rails. The woman opens her door with enough force that I'm surprised it didn't break. She starts screaming at me, telling me that I sabotaged her and I have to fix it. We informed her of her choices that she made, and then she turns a shade of red that I didn't think was possible. She then goes in a scream/yelling thing that I can't explain. I only made out a few words, like lawyer, sue, cops, as well as every swear word in the book. She told me if we didn't fix it, she would call police, corporate, managers, leave bad reviews on Yelp, the whole thing. We just said we warned her beforehand, but she didn't listen. The fault was hers and hers only. The woman just keeps screaming in the parking lot and we just went back inside. And here's where it gets worse. 10 minutes later, the police show up, demanding to know what happened and how we destroyed her car. I go over it with them away from her. We show them the photo evidence attached to the work order and the written release of liability she signed. They agreed with us. And watching them walk her back to her car and seeing the grin slowly turn into disbelief was priceless. The van sat in our parking lot for almost a month, while she tried to get management and corporate to pay for it all, and they denied it. The woman even got lawyers to contact us. We got a few calls from lawyers who we presented our evidence to, and they also said she had nothing. I think the best part of this entire ordeal is when she finally came to have it towed. We informed her that she owed us a lot of storage fees, at $15 a day after the 7th day of work completed. The diagnostic she paid for was the completed work. Cue the velociraptor screeches. Now, I want to make a point. Mechanics do get a bad name. 1 out of every 100 shops might screw people over. It's true. But as a mechanic, I will say that I've never done that. I've even given work away if the situation calls for it, but there was no helping this person. On the other hand, had she been nice and she informed me of money issues or something, I probably would have done the job for damn near nothing to help her out. What a mistake that Karen made, and the cherry on top, guys, was she had to pay the storage fees. And like Opie said, some mechanics may be sleazy, but not all. And the one thing you need in life is a mechanic that's trustworthy and does a good job. With that said though, here's a question, like why would she take it to OP's shop in the first place if she didn't trust mechanics at all? Like what was she expecting? Like was Karen the scammer in this situation and just looking to cause a scene to get her car fixed for free? Who knows? What I do know is how wild that situation got. Tantrums being thrown, cops being called, lawyers contacting OP. Like the only thing missing was her attacking OP and being sent to jail. Years ago, I used to work at a popular ice cream joint. The job was pretty chill, the coworkers were fun to be around, and the pay was alright for a teenager. But as with every other food service job, the customers made the experience a whole lot worse. It was always the regular annoyances, people yelling at you for long wait times, orders being wrong, etc. We even had a guy get up on the counter and berate me because we were out of bananas for banana splits. But one experience really stood out from the others. We had this regular customer who would come in every day to get a strawberry shake. The guy was fine with long waits or if the card machines were down, but this dude would summon the might of Satan if his milkshake wasn't made with enough milk in it. Worse, the guy would sit there and wait until you remade it to his liking. And here's the thing, stupid store policy made us remake any order for free if the customer wasn't happy with it. So this one day the dude comes in and he orders a strawberry milkshake. I was working the ice cream bar, so filled with defeat, I start making his order. The company recipe was 3 scoops of ice cream for a regular smoothie. And since I knew this guy liked his milky, I only put 2. I then hand it to him and went about the next orders, and 5 minutes later, he comes back and he screams at me that the milkshake wasn't milky enough. Now, every time in the past, I always made it this way. 2 scoops to give it that milky consistency, but this time, I guess he wanted to just F with me. At this point, I had enough. The day had been rough as it is, so I really didn't want to handle this. Especially since I could tell with that grin on his face that he was trying to make my day worse. And this is where the malicious compliance comes in. I decided to make the milkiest milkshake possible, but while still being a milkshake by technicality. I went back to my station and I started the concoction. And here's the thing, I didn't put 2 scoops, I didn't put 1 scoop, I put 1 tablespoon of strawberry ice cream, and then filled it up to the brim with milk. After the pointless blending, I handed him the milkshake he didn't want, but the one he deserved, and I watched him with my own grin beaming back at him while he tried his milkshake. The guy took a sip and he immediately lost it. He berates me saying that it's just milk. This is when I tell him, no sir, I put strawberry ice cream in there just as you asked. And I could see the rage in his eyes as he demanded his order be remade. I then politely inform him that our store policy only lets you have your order remade once for free. The guy's face burned bright red as he muttered something under his breath. He then storms out the door, slamming it behind him. And every time after that, he never asked me to remake his order. A few months later, I got a better job where I didn't have to deal with angry customers anymore. And this is exactly why I quit customer service a long time ago, because some people are just absolutely ridiculous and they're out to ruin people's days. Like, who in their right mind wants a milky milkshake, sir? Like, I know milkshakes are annoying to drink when they're super duper thick, but if you're paying for a milkshake, don't you think it would be a better deal to get more ice cream versus less ice cream? Clearly, this dude just loves having the power of bossing employees around. I'm a 32-year-old female and I work part-time at a pet store to supplement my income as my salary of a full-time teacher doesn't always pay the bills. Plus, I have a few pets, and a 20% off in-store purchases is rather helpful. Anyways, one of the things we supply are live and frozen feeder animals for things like reptiles, aquatic creatures, etc. These include things like mice, rats, roaches, bloodworms, mealworms, waxworms, superworms, and crickets. The mice and rats are either frozen or live, but either way, they're easy to count and box up for the customer. Roaches, mealworms, superworms are pre-packaged and price-marked, but the crickets are not. The crickets are kept in these large containers with a mesh top. This means when customers ask for crickets, we have to count and retrieve them manually while putting them in a plastic bag. While getting them to go in the bag, some crickets do jump in out of order or cling to others. So often, customers are given bonus crickets, which we're okay with. It's better than shorting them. So customers are always given the right amount, or often more than what they asked for, without an increase in price. And most people get this. The customer in this story did not. So one day, a woman comes in and she asked for 4 dozen crickets, 48 crickets total. So I went to the back and I counted them into a bag. As per usual, the occasional extra cricket tumbled or hopped in, putting the total to a bit over 50 by the time I was done. I bagged them, tied the bag, and then took them to the counter. Now, I don't know if this Karen was having a bad day or something, or she was stiffed by another store in the past, but she demanded that we count out the crickets in front of her before she paid for them. I explained it was likely she got more than what she asked for, and counting out 48 crickets individually would take a little while. The woman insisted, and she even got a bit aggressive, saying she wanted to be sure we weren't ripping her off, as some employees half-assed their job. Now, I was trying to tell her that for sure she got more than 48, but this is when she threatened me with the manager. So I got one of those small plastic critter keepers and a pair of tongs. I open the bag, insert the tongs, and I grab each one and start counting slowly, so I don't crush the crickets or lose my place while counting. One by one, I dropped each counted cricket into the critter keeper. So after about 5 to 10 minutes at the counter, meticulously counting crickets with tongs, a line was building up the woman, and I was getting close to the end of my count. Eventually, I hit the grand total of what she paid for, which was 48 crickets. And wouldn't you believe it, there were 10 left over in the bag. Almost a whole extra free dozen that she would have gotten had she not asked me to count. At this point, I tell her, "Oh, would you look at that? My mistake. You were right, I did miscount. I'll just go put these other ones back, and I'll ring you up for 48. I'll be right back." Well, the woman starts protesting, saying to just put them back in the bag. But I tell her, "Nope, you wanted 48, so you will get 48. And with that, I wandered off to dump the last 10 crickets back in the cricket container. When I came back to check her out, the woman was silent, not even looking at me. She did her best to ignore the irritated looks of the customers behind her while I poured the 48 crickets back in the plastic bag. She then paid, slunk off sheepishly out the door without a thank you or a glance back. She did return to our location several times after, and she never asked anyone to count crickets again. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance, where smug Karens get too demanding and they lose out on 10 frickin' crickets. Guys, if you enjoy the stories, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's in our /entitled people episode, where Karens are wishing people died so they can get their inheritances. Guys, it's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.